Okay, we are live on Goddess Vibrations. Quick turnaround. We've got it. We're just going to have Kirti on tonight to talk about what does it mean to have integrity in relationships. But instead, we have her partner Shophar, who is filling in last minute, and I'm kind of just loving this. I'm just kind of getting used to this unpredictable energy, Shophar, to be honest, because you and I co-facilitate a group together and we just ended that Zoom meeting. And then here we are again. I didn't think I was going to see you again tonight. And we were just talking in the group about my ability to move through change and just surrendering to the unpredictability. And I think the nice thing about unpredictability is can be good surprises too. It could be like, things that are like, whoa, I didn't see that coming, but also like good surprises. So we have to hold on to that. So thank you for being here. And this is also, I want to say, the first time this season you've been on the show. And I think you're the first man this season to be on the show. Okay. Somehow we've just ended up with a lot of goddess energy. So thanks for coming back.
Yeah. Well, dang, I'm very happy to be able to fill both of those then.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to introduce yourself or if I should introduce you to our listeners. I know a lot of times our little elevator titles change a little bit as we evolve. But how would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
So what I've been lately saying, Natasha, because I've been saying it to myself a while, but I've been kind of putting it out there more. I call myself more of a breath poet. So instead of saying qigong, I say breath poet, and I help people with their exhales and inhales to rhyme.
Oh wow! Okay, that's cool. I like that.
And I can still leave a lot of people like, but what the fuck is that? And that's exactly it. It's like,
you're like, exactly.
Right.
That's what I was going for.
Right.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. And then it does stimulate a conversation. And the reality is that all of us are so many things, and you are so many things. And I know your background has to do with traditional Chinese medicine, and obviously qigong is like your main thing. You also do energy work and couples work and sensuality, like healing with Kirti, and working with couples and individuals and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things that you're bringing to the table. And because we're talking about integrity, I want to just say, like, you're somebody that's done your work. Like, you really have done your work and you continue to show up and do your work. And so what a beautiful guest to have on for this topic. And of course, Kirti also is someone that is doing her work. So you can see why the two of you would attract each other and then to do more work. But that I would like to talk about that. So I would like to talk about what is integrity in a relationship, as well as what is integrity when you hang out your shingle and say, hey, I'm accepting money now to help people in this personal development or to do this healing work. And what are the preparations for that? I happen to know because I attended a live webinar with one of your mentors, Sasha Cobra, who she had a whole huge following of folks from all over the world that were there on her Zoom meeting. And a few of the folks connected in a group afterwards. And what a sentiment that kept getting shared over and over is that Sasha says that she doesn't teach the work. She doesn't teach people to do the work that she does. She teaches them to be it, to, like, in other words, like, you have to embody it. There's no way around. It's the only way is to actually do it yourself. And so that being a really important part of being able to use those talents or skills with others. So I like that. That's one definition of integrity. Another definition that I really liked that I just sent out in my newsletter announcing the show was integrity means preserving the wholeness of something, right? And so I think that Merriam-Webster definition was probably relating more to like buildings and foundations and things like that. But if we do apply it to relationships, how would our interactions change if we were actually asking questions or communicating in a way to preserve the wholeness of the relationship?
I love that. Okay.
Which then reminds me of Tantra, which
Right.
is your field, your expertise.
Okay. Let me see. Well, what I would ask everybody to do actually is just because I love to make it when possible, and I think this one, Natasha, actually does lend itself to giving a great physical lesson with it. Is so for us to take a deep breath in, hold it for a little bit, and then just without stressing your body, let it out. You don't want to hold it too long. And then everybody open your eyes. And to me, Natasha, is like that out breath was integrity. Because it was just natural. It preserved the wholeness that you were talking about. And I think when we really are in alignment, there's a natural process or something, some intelligence that's already in the works, and that we just align ourselves with it. And it's just as integral as it is just as breathing, So whether it's time to hang our shingle or not, or in a relationship to speak our truth, it is just as natural as an inhale and exhale. And to give an example, a couple of examples just for me on my journey is, there was a place where, because I know you talked about putting the shingle up, so let's go to there first. I first was, and I always like to say, and this is for anybody listening to through time and space, is that Tantra to me is just a grand remembrance. No one teaches us Tantra. We all know it in our DNA level. But the thing is that in my remembrance, it wasn't time for me to start, sharing it with other people. I was sparked in 2002 with the remembrance in this lifetime about it. And I didn't hang the shingle, so to speak, until 2014. So that was a little window there. And I'm not saying everybody needs to take as long as I did. But what I do see is that there are a lot of people, especially when you factor in our own personal traumas, our ancestral traumas, our collective world traumas. I think people move too quickly to be masters of stuff, especially in that field. So I'll just leave it at that. And then another thing is like, no one just pops out with me. Is like one of the masters who introduced this to me or whatever, or helped me remember this lifetime. There came a point where I had to have a very real man-to-man conversation with him, and like I respect you, and I know, that you have your own organization and what you do, and I'm going to do it a little bit different, and I kind of have, I have a little bit of an ego. So I'm like, and my male energy wants to be kind of like the head, in a way. I can fall in line. And then I also know when it's time for me to set my own parameters. And it was time for me to do that myself. So that was an integrity for me to do that. So what I'm getting at is in relationships is really about, just like with that breath, is like speaking at the right moment or moving in the right moment. And it should feel as natural as the inhale, exhale.
Yeah, I love that too. The inhale, exhale, because it is that sacred balance, and it's all one. If you can't have the inhale without the exhale, you can't have the exhale without the inhale. The yin and yang, the same diagram, and that's the symbol, the image that immediately popped up in me when I read that definition about wholeness. And I thought what you're talking about is becoming, getting in touch with your own wholeness, maybe even before hanging your shingle. Like looking at, I'm not this broken piece of something, and then just gonna say abracadabra, I'm a master now at this thing because I just did this work for 6 months or a year or whatever else. That's just the beginning, right? And to have the awareness to know where you're at on the journey and be honest about it and ethical about it, and that is the integrity piece. And then also that bit about our relationships, whether they're a mentor and a trainee, or they're friends, or it's a lover. If one is taking too much. You're inhaling too much and not exhaling enough. You're not going to be in a good place in your body, right? You're going to have chronic stress, you're going to have illness, disease, all of this stuff because of the imbalance of it. So when are we not in our wholeness, not in our truth, and now maybe we're taking somebody else's work and we're calling it our own? You know, we're not giving back enough of our own genius, ability, whatever. And then there might be times when we have a mentor. Mentors have egos too. I think of like Freud and Jung. Freud was not happy about Jung saying, I enjoyed, you know, communing with you and our shared passion, and I'm going to do it this way. And he was like, how dare you? Like, I created this theory and it's this way, you know, and they branched off. And I often use Freud and Jung as kind of like Freud being the masculine and Jung being the feminine of psychology, because Jung actually looked into intuition and the collective unconscious and all of this stuff. And Freud was really just about the linear processes, more analytical psychology. And so there could be times when, you know, that there's not a balance there. And how do we look at that and be in integrity with ourselves as who we are as a whole, unique individual that is still able to stay connected to that mentor, that friend, you know, that lover. I think about it also. I do a partnership with a wellness center here in Carlsbad, and I've been a contractor there for about 6 years now. And I'm not an employee. We have a partnership, and it is my intention. And I went into this partnership, and I reiterate it often because it's been a very healthy and lovely, mutually supportive partnership, that everything I do is not just looking at how I can gain, but it's looking at how we can grow together. And so what can I offer to your business, your organization, that allows you, that boosts you up and assists you? And what can you offer me that builds my business and boosts me up? And as long as we're staying focused on that wholeness, that integrity, right, then we get to grow together and become something bigger than we could separate or alone. And then you distill that integrity down to ethics. And it's things like having agreements about handling business and who's going to show up here and who's going to do what and why, you know, all of these little pieces. The more clear they are and the more locked down they are, with a nice structure, but also flexibility and fluidity to grow and evolve and change, that's a healthy partnership. And I have so much gratitude for them and other entities in my life, whether it's a person or an organization, where I can create that healthy partnership. It really is. It just makes my heart expand, you know, to have that kind of energy. And yet probably the hardest partnerships to keep that wholeness, that integrity, which I'm going to say integrity as in wholeness, like doing something for the whole, are romantic partnerships. Right?
Right.
And why, I mean, what's your theory? Why is it so hard? I mean, I have my theories, but why is it so much harder in romantic partnerships?
Well, I think because somewhere our relationships forget the Tao. You know, it forgets like you talked about the tantra or the tantra of it all. Like, it's natural and integrity for the plant behind you. That's a real plant there, right? To
That's a fake one.
Oh, okay.
Not an integrity with
it's not an integrity, Natasha. I can't use that one. Okay. fake ass plants around here out of integrity.
But I'm being in integrity with you by telling you the truth. So.
Right. Oh, see. There you go. I like it. So let's suppose that it was a real plant. The plant, you know, integritous to itself, you know, takes in your oxygen and gives back, you know, it takes in the carbon dioxide or whatever and gives back oxygen and everything, and you do the vice versa for it. And there's that yin and yang that you spoke about and everything. Somehow in our relationships, the Tao, the path, the way gets we put artificial things in there,
Mhm.
and whether it be you know, false belief systems, or desires, ideas that we
Mhm.
come in, expectations, any of these things that we place into the relating, I think can then mess up that wholeness and make us not now be in integrity in the relating.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I've been becoming more clear about those, owning those things that I can be responsible for,
Yes.
the humanness. And I feel like, I guess, Kirti and I have been talking for a couple of weeks now about polyamory, monogamy, all of these things. And one of the problems being that I think and this is going to tie into hanging the shingle too, by the way. But one of the problems being is that polyamory is often used as a way to not be in integrity with true intimacy and true presence and connection. And it's like, nah, like, cause I don't want to, you got bad vibes, or I don't want to, like, oh, you're yelling at me now, so I'm going to go over to this person, and I'm going to be with this person. And it's like needing to have this exit or escape or whatever. And when it's practiced that way, it gives it a bad name. Just like when somebody, you know, watches The Secret and then makes their dream board and says their affirmations over and over and over again, but doesn't understand the subconscious mind, or doesn't understand where the law of attraction and quantum physics and how this, let's say, theory actually works. And then they take this just very tip of the iceberg thing, the fun parts of it, the fun parts that are very, easy to share and sell. And then it doesn't work for people. And then people are like, oh, that's such bullshit. I can't believe you're talking about that. And it makes the whole thing look bad. And I feel like this is happening. I've talked to other, let's say, maybe not elders, but maybe like mid-age to older folks in the sacred sexuality community, or that are who are doing personal growth work. And they're so frustrated and annoyed lately with what's going on in the sacred sexuality circles, now that this is very trendy to be a healer in sacred sexuality. And in a lot of it too is even partly the women's movement, where women are now empowered to be, whatever you want to do, explore your sexuality in whatever ways. But if we're not really looking at the depth of what it is that you're doing, I call it perfumed patriarchy. You're just using the same methods, but now you're slapping a female face on it, and now it's empowerment. And it doesn't work that way. The whole system has to shift, right? And so this is part of what prompted this conversation. This episode is talking about that sort of thing, and how folks are, especially, social media has its evils and it has its ways of connecting, but these ideas, these little pieces, you only have 30 words or 300 words or whatever, these little pieces of ideas get shared, and then people, oh, let me share that, and you don't get the full depth, because anybody could share that. Anybody could get a master's degree on Instagram posts, and then, make it into a course and sell it. And people are like, yeah, I've heard all those buzzwords. I really am interested in that, because they're not really looking to see what is that person's foundations. What work have they done personally? How are they walking their talk? How are they living their life? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it feels like to me that the monogamy piece, like you were saying, and that integrity piece of us, again, it seems like a theme of rushing, or I was talking to some friends, and shout out to Will and Rashawn, two very wise brothers, and one of them, I can't remember which one, that's why I shout out both of them, but one of them said that we all are polyamorous because our monogamy is ourself. And I was like, So it's like as soon as we're in relating with anybody else, now we're polyamorous. I was like, okay, I can dig that. I can see that.
Mhm.
Uh, and with that being said, though, most of us, and you've heard me say this before, that one of the mentors that we've learned from, shout out to Kenya and Rakim Stevens, that one of their tenets of their program is to master monogamy first.
Mhm.
And and everybody's path is different. I try to envision like how maybe because there's not a lot of examples, so it doesn't mean that everybody got to go their way. But
Mhm.
with that being said, Natasha, again, because of our own shit, ancestral shit, collective, I think most of us to go into a relationship and from the jump trying to be poly, I'm not saying that we can't do that, but
Mhm.
we really just have to do a big check in and see like, uh, are we really there? Are we there yet? So it's not to say that we're not, but I
Mhm.
think there definitely needs to be a deep dive to see if it, because that is asking a lot in your own energy field and of your partners and the stuff that's going to come up, and that that's already the case in monogamy, and now we're multiplying it.
Multiplying it, exactly. And I think again about the definition of integrity, building the foundation.
Mm.
So you build the foundation with one person. Now you feel like you're good, you're stable. You're like, okay, what else can, what can expand this now? Now, then understandably, you're going to be putting more time and energy into another person. And maybe, you're at that point of life where it's okay. I follow Kenya, so I've been, I'm not as familiar with her work as you or Kirti, obviously having worked with her, but um, I hear her saying that she was not polyamorous while she was raising her children,
Mm.
and being a mother. She's like, heck no, I had to be home, like taking care of those babies. Like, if I'm not out there, I'm having to do all this responsibility, then he needs to be here helping me with this responsibility, that sort of thing. And I thought about it, and um, it's it's true. But even if, let's say, you decide you're a woman and you decide not to give birth, so now you don't have a baby to breastfeed, or you're still putting out extra energy just having a uterus each month, and the things that the energy drain, let's say, or the energy consumed just to prepare for that possibility in life, in the ways that um, impacts women. And it makes me think about, can we ever really be free of gender roles? Because I've heard Kenya say, like, there are no gender roles, we're flipping the gender roles and this sort of thing. But as long as we're in these biological bodies with working uteruses, I feel like you can't fully escape some of the gender roles, because there's an energy imbalance. There's an energy imbalance where women are biologically born to handle certain things, whether they choose to go all the way with that or not. Their body is still doing the work.
Right.
you know? So I think about stuff like that. And I think about how, again, with this topic of integrity, with wholeness, like wholeness, not just ourselves, not just this dynamic between the two people in the relationship, but the greater collective. Let's say the family, let's say the friend group, the circle, the tribe, however you want to define that. It affects everybody because we are energetically connected and tethered through our emotional connections, right? And this, of course, is goes back to TCM, traditional Chinese medicine theory, and the organs, and it also aligns with my theories of the family, with marriage and family therapy systems and family systems. Um, when we understand this, it's how do we how do we how do we create truly healthy relationships that are adding value to the tribe, that are adding value to the family. And I hear so many stories every day. I hear stories about these relationships, these marriages, a lot of times legal marriages where they're miserable. And even both partners are off having a mistress and a boyfriend and this and that. And I always wonder, like, why even stay married? like, you're doing that for the kids. Do you think they don't feel that, or that's helping? Like, it's really bizarre. I don't want to judge anybody, but I know I could not be in that, because you can't put me in a room for 10 minutes and I'm not going to speak the elephant in the room. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, it's like an urgency I have to call out the truth. Again, that's, I guess I get another level of integrity, but how do we create these relationships? And you mentioned something about there not being enough models. I think society is pressured right now to come up with a different model of relationship as we're getting more involved with the equality conversation, the women's movement, Black Lives Matter, all of these things. We're becoming more and more aware of these systemic injustices and how pervasive they are. And so as we work to rebalance this, it's like we're also rebalancing our relationships, our intimate relationships, and not realizing the subconscious programming that has trickled down to our everyday interactions, even in love. And so if we're going to change that and shift that with our moment to moment presence, what the heck kind of relationship does that look like? And I think a lot of people that even desire that don't even know if that's possible. And I actually read a blog on Kenya's website today where it was a woman saying, this is what polyamory means to me. This is what I'd like to have. And then she even said, I don't know if I'll ever have this, but it's a theory, So where is it being practiced? Where is that balance? And I think that sometimes when people do choose to stick with monogamy, it's for clarity sometimes. It's clear. It's like, nope, this is the structure. And then maybe if it doesn't work, then we adjust it, or we swap partners, like trade in, like divorce, marry somebody else, whatever else, And I think so much of it probably has to do with personality, like different personality needs or desires fitting different structures that you create. But I mean, what do you think about that? What is your ideal relation? How do you think a healthy relationship would function within a healthy tribe? What's your idea? What's your utopian dream?
Okay. Well, first I want to speak to that clarity piece that you said about some people maybe pick monogamy because it's just simpler. It's just very clear. And I'll speak for myself. I know on my journey, I think the most I think 1 year, and I knew it kind of had got out of hand for me on my journey. I know there's people that's probably even way more than this, but on Valentine's Day, I had like 7 or 8 flowers to buy. I mean, sets of flowers to buy and send to all of the different ladies and everything. And I'm like, this ain't gonna work. I can't. And then
form of money.
yeah. And for me, Natasha, is also like, and I think because of my mom's influence or just my own makeup, I don't know, but I feel like I'm pretty thoughtful as a guy. Like I know there's always another level, but I'm pretty thoughtful. And so I would be like, I would feel bad on Thanksgiving if I'm with one, but the other 6 I'm not. And of course, my little mind, at that time, it didn't exist a way where, in my reality where I could have had it all. That's the thing too. Like everybody could be happy, but that didn't exist at that time. It was like either or.
Oh,
so,
right.
Yeah. So anyway, what I'm getting to is that monogamy felt very clear and like a lot of stress for me at a certain point. So I was like, yeah, I want that for right now.
Yeah.
Because and so that was a thing. So I definitely get that. Another thing though, to get to that community that we're talking about, this Zion, this utopia. One thing I wanted to speak to too is about you saying about judgment, that you weren't judging or whatever. I think this is something that at least I'll speak again for myself, that I'm working through, is like, it's okay to judge. I just don't want to condemn. And it's semantics too. Like some people use judgment how I'm using condemning. So I get that. But for me, I'm trying to make a energetic distinction in my own being that I want to judge. I don't want to prejudge, but I do want to judge, like, oh, you know what, that relationship type, or lying about my connection with someone or whatever, that does not work for me. That's not wholeness. That's not integrity. And then when I see other people doing it, I don't also want to condemn it though. So, or condemn myself, and then the last thing I was going to speak to was one of the things you said. See if that I did. Oh, I think we're moving towards all this with the reason why we're being called forth. As a good friend of mine, he says, we're being called forth is because we're moving to the meta. We're moving meta. It's beautiful that technology and stuff is trying to mirror what we're already doing. And we are moving meta relationships, meta monogamy, meta poly. We're moving beyond these things to something that we don't even know yet. So to answer your question, I don't even know, because I don't think any of us know. We're in the process of discovering what this is going to be.
Yeah, well, and we're dealing with the eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio are coming up for the next 2 years. So we'll be and that being a lot of having to do with sex and intimacy and truth and money and power, and that's that whole node, I guess. It makes me think of Eternals. So if you look at the love structure between the main characters, right? The Eternals are not human. They're sort of divine, and they were divinely created or whatever. And they're rare, and they have a network, and they obviously have a tribe because they've been living for however many thousands of years, 5,000, 10,000 years or whatever they were saying. And they have some like romantic attractions, or even some of them are just a romantic attraction. Some is like a friendship that you wonder if it's a little bit romantic. Others, the Icarus and Circe, they actually were married in one of their lifetimes or whatever, and they have this wisdom because they've lived so long. And they've had these many different iterations of their relationships. And so if you think about past lives, right, they're kind of like the archetype for past lives, because they remember, theoretically, when we come back and we've had this past life, we don't remember exactly we don't have the conscious awareness, because now we're in our humanness. And then we might have these moments of divine guidance or divine remembering or whatever, and oh wow, but we know that we're maybe drawn to that person. So it's like we're getting closer to our eternal self, like an eternal, by remembering, but they're always remembering that wisdom. And so if you were to, and they're like cool with each other, they've been together for all those thousands of years. So like, yeah, he left for 5,000 years. I figured you'd come back, but you never did. So I moved on after, a few thousand years, moved on with this guy or whatever else, this human guy. And I think, like, how could you bring that kind of love into human form if you haven't had that awareness or that remembrance? Right? And so when we get caught up, I think you talked about the things that interfere with the breath, or like, why can't we show up in wholeness in our relationships? We get stuck in that humanness and the maybe the stories we tell ourselves, or the different perceptions, or getting really so over identifying with our own perspective rather than maybe the eternal perspective. It's just, the word is so perfect for those. It just works both ways for that character as well as the archetype. So I don't know, that's what comes up for me, is as I continue to process that movie and watch and sit with that movie, I keep thinking about how it is a model for relationships, and they haven't even figured it out, because at the end of the movie they're like now flipping the script, so they're in the same place that we're at as a human. Right, so we're trying to flip the script, and they're almost becoming a little more human. And thinking, wait a minute, we were commissioned to do this, but is this the right thing to do? And so the humans maybe are trying to, have the wisdom of the Eternals, but the Eternals are trying to have the love and the joy and the beautiful parts of humanity. Where is the blend, and is the blend possible?
Right. Shit.
And then, of course, when I ask that question, I'm asking, in our lives.
Sure.
Where's
Sure.
that blend?
Yes. No, I think that's a very good question. I think that's probably an age-old, eternal
Eternal
question.
There's the breath poet coming out.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an age-old question. Like, I mean, that's the ancient stories tell of the angels, what do they call it, the Malachim, and the Anunnaki and these other beings coming down to Earth to have these earthly experiences, and that's kind of like what I think the Eternals was being based on, is these old ancient stories of everything, but yet then we want to be more like, quote unquote, them and everything. So yeah, I think if we're going to find the answer, though, Natasha, I think it's in our DNA. And I think DNA, that's why I like to use the acronym Divine Natural Awareness, because to me it's like a river that's always going. And that if we're going to find, what I'm getting at is that in a swan's DNA is to be coupled up and be monogamous for life. And then in a lion's DNA is to have the pride, and to sometimes the lioness might switch out the two brothers, Simbas, and one after the next or whatever, and there's all different other ways that nature shows up and everything. So if we're going to have it, it's already in us, and we have to uncover what's the real in each one of us. To tie it in and make it more succinct for people, Nichiyama, he says something that really always stood out to me. It's like, the body was never meant to hold lies. So when we talk about integrity, the body was never meant to hold lies. So if we're tuning into this compass, Deepak talks about this being a compass. There should be something telling us somewhere in our body, like, nah, this is not working for me, or this is not truthful.
That's probably the most guiding light of integrity right there, is because if you're tuning into that moment to moment awareness, you know what's right for you, because your body is telling you.
And you said something very important there, that I want to just highlight what you just said, the wisdom there to the listeners, is moment to moment. Going back to us back in the very beginning with the breath. In order to be in integrity, we had to take the inhale, then we had to take the exhale, and then we got to keep, and it don't stop.
Yeah, you don't stop breathing. You're like, oh,
no,
I have enough breath for today.
Right. And I think that's something that we're getting at here, is that it is a moment to moment thing. That is what makes it tantric. That's what makes it Taoist.
Yeah. And then there's so many different layers and so many different pieces that are sliding around or shifting, and then some that are more stable. Like, for example, I had a lover who was very upset because he wanted the freedom, not that he needed to, but he wanted to have the freedom to just be with whoever he wanted to be. So if he happened to meet somebody, he just wanted to have sex with her right there, then he should have the freedom to do that. That was his thought. But he also didn't want to extend that freedom to me, because he felt that I should be loyal to him. And if there was any indication or any question that I maybe wasn't, then he would pout and get very upset. Right. And I I tend to energetically commit. So once I'm locked in with someone energetically, I just don't really, I'm not really interested in anyone else. So it's, for me, it's very natural to be loyal and faithful and that sort of thing. And it would hurt me more than it would hurt them, I think, if I wasn't.
Mm.
Again, that integrity piece is really important to me. And
Mm.
it would eat me up. Like I would not feel good about it at all. And so this is partly why and when entering relationships very early on, I like to talk about these pieces,
Mm.
because I would hate to accidentally overstep a boundary that they assumed that wasn't clear with me. And now I've hurt someone
Mm.
unintentionally, but I wasn't quite where they were at yet. Or, in the beginning of a relationship, you're still trying to feel each other out or whatever. Anyway, he said, so use the example, there's only one rooster in a chicken house. Like, there's lots of chickens and one rooster. And I said, well, but I'm a hawk. Like, I'm not a chicken. And particularly red-tailed hawk is my main spirit guide. And I actually did a little research at the time, because I got my tattoo while we were dating. And I was like, red-tailed hawks mate for life. I had no idea that they were monogamous, and they take turns sitting on the nest and the eggs. So they have in many ways escaped, I guess, the gender roles, except the courtship. And the male will, if he sees a female that he's interested in, he'll try to dazzle her with his aerial dynamics and his spirals and all of this stuff, and just show off for her. And then if she likes his show, then she'll fly up next to him and like start to fly with him. And and then they kind of sync up, and then they hunt together, they parent together, they trade off. Everything is kind of 50-50. They do it together. And I'm like, that is me. I'm a hawk. Like, I'm not a chicken waiting for the rooster to come in and like trying to like lay my eggs by myself over here with all my sisters. You know what I mean? Like that. And if that works, I know that works for some people. Again, it's just not, I'm not a chicken. So, so I think you can find any animal in the animal kingdom to,
exactly.
it's just, to your point, to prove what you want or whatever else. But, and so was he in integrity? I suppose so, because that's what he wants. That's his desire. And to this day, I'm like, yeah, he was always very honest, and I appreciate that, about what it is that he wanted. And that was why we were never able to make a commitment, because it wasn't what I wanted. And at a certain point, he's like, well, you understand me, you allow me to be free, I think you're the one, like we should get married, like all of this stuff. And I'm like, yes, I do understand you, and I understand, and you are free, and I do want you to be free, but what do I get out of this? Because none of my needs are going to get met. And that's just my very Taurus logistical side. I'm like, yes, be free. But if I married you, I'd have to have 5 other boyfriends in order to get my needs met. Or I could just hold out for one person who meets at least most of those needs, right? You can fill in the other pieces with friendships or whatnot. So I don't know. I feel, and so, we were both in integrity. He was in integrity with saying what he wanted, and I don't think he's found that yet. And I was in integrity with what I wanted, and I've come close, but haven't quite found that yet. And it's but it's the moment to moment, and that could shift. Now, I've heard that happen before, where people have an idea of what they want, they get together, and something else happened, and now it changes. And that, back to the full circle, the world is changing right now. So relationships are going to change.
I think that, Natasha, is because ultimately is that in our DNA, we supposedly the junk DNA, you've heard of this stuff, right? Which is, I think that's BS. There's no junk. But somewhere in there, somewhere in the pug is the wolf, somewhere in the rooster might be a cousin of the red-tailed hawk. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like, so you get what I'm getting at is that in other words, we have all of these things in us. It's just like some switches are flipped and the other ones aren't. So
Mhm,
maybe in life you might find that, oh, another, you know, I feel now to be more monogamous where I felt to be poly or vice versa.
mhm,
You know, there's that divine check-in, and that we the beautiful thing is that we have it all in us, and to
mhm,
um, be honest about, you know, where we're at and which ones are wanting to come to the forefront at this time.
mhm. And then again, back to the wholeness, like what the first step, I guess, being authentic with ourselves and understanding what we want, what would make us feel whole, and then not imposing that onto another person
Yes.
and saying, like, okay, this is what would make me feel whole, but what would preserve the wholeness of our relationship? And sometimes preserving that wholeness means that you're no longer in romantic partnership together, or you're maybe no longer, if it's like a family member, you no longer do holidays together, or you don't live in the same state or whatever, because that preserves the wholeness and the health of that relationship.
Yeah. Well, and I think what the challenge for us as human beings on this planet is that we have many systems, whether it be our government, our religions, our education systems, so on and so forth, entertainment, that they are very much about um, having basically, like, I guess like you would say, farms and herds. And so in order to have domesticated creatures, you have to give certain belief systems and things that fit across the board.
Mhm.
You don't got no time for no red tail hawks here. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all are all fucking chickens. You're all
You
chickens.
are all chickens, and we're
Right,
gonna overcrowd you. Yeah.
right.
Take your
Or
toy.
yeah, right. Or so it's like, or whatever. I guess in this case, like whatever the main beliefs of the society, and I do get it. Like sometimes these things don't start off nefarious. They start off to protect the little tribe, you know.
Mhm,
And this is going to be best for us if we do this way of relating or this way of being.
mhm,
But somewhere it gets lost when things expand or whatever, or we take away individuals' freedoms.
mhm,
You know.
mhm. Yep. Yeah. And I feel like the subtle thing that keeps coming up in relationships is this it is this patriarchal notion, because really patriarchy is narcissism. I think we talked a little bit about this when we went up to LA.
Mm,
But and white supremacy is narcissism,
mm,
and these are the systems that built this country. White supremacy, patriarchy, everybody has a place in the hierarchy that somebody decided it's going to be like this, and that's how it is. And then like you said, there's these program beliefs and these things that keep that locked in to the now you can't break out of it, even if you have the illusion of being free, which I think we're probably seeing some of that just in multiple issues right now. But then how are we perpetuating that in our relationships?
mm.
By, and it can look different ways, like it might be adhering too strongly to gender roles, and it could be the opposite. It could be rejecting the gender roles when actually energetically it would be a better match to stick with a traditional gender role. And one thing I noticed, like in my marriage, I'll say, is I thought that I was very clear I wanted to marry somebody who could be flexible in gender roles. And I thought that he could be. And yet, when it got to the point where it was time for me to go back to school, and I was still working full time, so I was the main primary breadwinner. And then he finished school and he was working part time. And then we flipped, and now he needed to take care of the kids. He needed to be the primary, taking care of the kids, the groceries, the shopping list, the laundry, the domestic stuff, because I literally was booked about 80 hours a week. He couldn't do it. I did it for about 7 years, and it took a lot out of me. I struggled with my health. I was going in and out of adrenal fatigue, thyroid issues, all of this stuff, because my energy is being depleted. And I'm like, okay, now, and I found a way to heal that. And now we're going to flip flop so I can go finish my education. And he lasted about 3 months. And it was heartbreaking. But I think a lot of times in a patriarchal setup, a woman has had to develop the skills to do a man's role as well as a woman's role. But men haven't yet had the opportunity or the ability to develop the skills to flop and do the woman's traditional roles, which are maybe the main manager of the household, taking care of the kids, like cooking all the meals, meal planning, making sure everybody gets sent a Christmas card, and the social manager and connector of the tribe, the family, that sort of thing, the roles that women kind of just unconsciously take on, because again, it's passed down through our DNA, and we see our mothers and our grandmothers and all of this do. And so I feel like it can put a lot of pressure on a relationship that's now trying to flop or flip-flop, and in my case, like, it ended up leading to, well, there are lots of things that led to my divorce. It wasn't just that thing, it wasn't just one thing, but I realized, like, this isn't going to work. He cannot take over my role. And so if I'm out in the world getting my education, making the money, more traditional provider, masculine, whatever roles, we would have to hire somebody out to do the domestic stuff. And at the time, there really wasn't the money for that. Or if there was, it would be coming out of my exertion. And then I thought, well, then what is he contributing to this wholeness, this integrity, the integrity of the relationship, right? And he was talking about wanting to get a studio, because he needed his own space, and he needed to rent a studio so he could do his drawings or renderings. I mean, that would be lovely, but that's extra when it comes to all the things that are right in front of us, like breathing down our necks, right? And so I think of that as like being a patriarchal thing. It's like, I'm speaking from a woman's perspective right now, of course, in my own personal experience, but the first step to unwinding that is when she actually was liberated from the home. And if she chose to, she could go out and get work. And now getting work and still being attached to the home. And the balance hasn't flipped yet. We're like in this transition point that is almost putting more stress on women. I feel like sometimes it puts more stress on women maybe than even traditional gender roles, even though those are kind of fucked up too. And so I think, like, how the heck do we get out of this? Like, the answer is not go back.
No.
And we can't keep on like this either.
No, it's not nature's plan, I think, Natasha, for us to keep going this way. I think there's that natural DNA blueprint for us to start questioning these things. That's why some of the youngins, they're doing what they're doing, as far as questioning these gender roles and stuff like that. And I think each one of us on our journey, we would do very good to look at the connection between gender and polarity. And because it plays very much into Tantra, so I'll go into this a little bit. So the ancient people of Kemet, of the African nation of Kemet, aka Egypt, they had 7 axioms. The first one is that the universe is mental. That trumps everything. That the universe is mental. And there's some other ones, but there's 2 other ones too. That things show gender, and that things show polarity. And to me, polarity and gender have a yin and yang existence. And yin and yang theory, and it's theory, so it doesn't mean that it really exists, it's just a theory. But in the yin and yang theory, it always has to be in comparison to something. So to me, gender is more of the feminine role compared to polarity. Usually in yin and yang theory, the more subtle thing is the yang, or the masculine aspect, the seed versus the soil being the yin, right? So what I'm getting at is that um, I think we've come to a place where on this physical realm, as more and more consciousness, as we're expanding consciousness wise, we're coming out of being ruled by gender as much, and we're starting to move more into polarity. Whereas polarity it becomes even more distinct, more indistinct, and flows more. And the more that we start to embrace that, we find that we'll probably be happier beings. And for a lot of us, in order to have those polarities in ourself and then in our relating to be able to happen, we've got to bring the heart online, especially for the men on the planet. Many of us, we need to connect our heart with our dick, you know, and for some women too, they've given up going and bringing their consciousness into their yoni space, into their pussy. It's got to go back down there because sometimes it's been traumas, if not again to them as individuals, but again collectively and ancestrally. So in order to move out of gender and or leave it behind a little bit more, and then be able to be happier and stuff, we're going to have to start embracing polarity more.
Well, and I agree with you, because one thing that's so interesting to me is I'm aware of this complementarity in my various relationships. So there's sometimes where I'm the overfunctioner, and sometimes I'm the underfunctioner. Those are therapy terms that we'll use. There's like an overfunctioner, underfunctioner, and it has to do with codependency or whatever else, right? But there's usually somebody who will take on the responsibility in a dynamic, and somebody who will be sit back and let the other one take on the responsibility, kind of thing. And for me, it shifts depending on who's there. And I would say if I'm with it'll typically be, I know more women who are alpha than men. Like, so in my, in my interactions, if I'm with a very strong, like alpha woman, I will become the underfunctioner, and she's kind of like taking over, and I don't have a problem with that. I'm like, yeah, this is my role. Like, I'm fine with this. And then I'll be in another situation. I'm the alpha, and I'm taking the lead, and I'm wondering, like, am I being too pushy, or am I, doing too much right now? Because I'm conscious and aware of these things. There's other times where with certain, and I like to look at this with female friends, because then we're only dealing with one gender. So it's less variables to the scientific experiment, I guess. And so some females, I will take on the masculine role with them, even if have very strong masculine qualities. I'll even say with Kirti, I notice it when I'm in a place with Kirti. I feel a lot of times like I'm her bodyguard. I take it on. I'm not saying that she needs that. I just naturally fall into that role of like wanting to kind of protect her, or her space, or caretake for her, or these sorts of things, because I feel like, and a lot of times I guess I'm with her, maybe she's leading a ceremonial space, or she's kind of going into her more intuitive, like channeling or whatever else. So I'm wanting to like hold the space, so it's really interesting. But Kirti herself is a very, she has a lot of like strong masculine energy too, and can be really dynamic, right? And so it's really interesting. But then I can be with another woman. There's another woman we've spoken to this in our movement medicine circle, where if I'm in her energy, she's definitely the more masculine role. Like, I'm going to be taking over more, I'm going to fall into the feminine. And it's so interesting to watch this. And I appreciate, I have my certain friends that they show up in a masculine, supportive, protector, provider kind of way. And those are the female friends that I keep close to me, because I need that. And then I find that the same, I guess, with men, is that if their masculinity with our dynamic isn't enough to hold my femininity and allow her to fall into the feminine then that's probably not going to be a very sustainable relationship for me, because in my romantic partners, maybe not just my friend circles or my day-to-day life, I do enjoy being more in that feminine energy, even though I'm very well aware that emotionally, a lot of times I'm in the masculine role, because being a therapist, it's easy for me to listen. I like to listen. I like to hold space. I like to process, hear people's thoughts, things like that. So sometimes I can be more calm one in those spaces, or the one that's less fearful of going there, I guess, and just like being able to like hold on to it. So I feel like it's different depending on the unique chemistry of the person in front of us.
Right.
And it always
Yeah.
shifts. And so if we are aware of that, and we become maybe less reactive about whether they're in a male body or a female body. And so I'll have to check in with some of my friends that provide more of that masculine caretaking for me and see how they feel about that, my female friends, and see if they like it. Because if I have a male friend that does that for me, I know he loves it. Like, it boosts his testosterone. He feels good. I feel good. It's nice. It's really nice. But I have to check in with my female friends, because maybe she does that for me, and maybe she doesn't feel like she's getting that same kind of support either from me or somewhere else in her life. Because it doesn't always just go back and forth between the same two people, right?
Right.
Again, speaking to these like polyamorous networks or whatever. But then I know that when I'm in that, and I'm in that role of like bodyguard with Kirti, I enjoy that role. Like, I don't ever feel resentful. I don't like feel, like, oh man, I was in my masculine again. You know what I mean? And it probably does, like, with Kirti and I, probably does bounce back and forth as well. And she does a lot of space holding for me too, and support. So it probably, goes back and forth. But it's interesting to look at beyond gender with this polarity thing, because I think it's very popular, going back to these hanging your shingle and the spiritual fluff that's out there. I think it's very popular to talk about polarity and just oversimplify what that is, and not really see it from the foundations of what it is, which is what you're talking about: Taoism, Tantra, yin and yang, and the philosophers that came up with stuff, rather than just talking about sexual magnetism, as or a relationship. It goes much deeper.
Right. Yeah, I think what's missing a lot of times in those equations is that those philosophers and stuff, that when they came up and these things spoke to them, it came from deep connection with nature, with Ifa, with the mother, and with sitting out there, and you come up with these different theories and everything, and that's missing now. Is just the books, and I learned it from this person who learned it from a book and school and everything, and it's like, not to knock that, but I think it becomes real to us in a way that we don't have to think about it, like you were just saying, how you and Kirti are moving back and forth and everything. If we're just moving at a book level, good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
Now you go and you have to figure out who. Good, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Or you can just do it, but that's because you're in your nature.
Yeah. That's what it is. And I think this is the discernment piece, is understanding, am I doing it because this is the role that I was programmed into from my family, from my relationships, from not having my needs met, from trying to get my needs met, those sorts of things? Or is this just the natural energy of this dynamic? Is this how it flows best?
Yes.
Thing. And then not getting mad at the other person because they're not doing what they're supposed to do or whatever else, and just really see the wholeness, the integrity of the relationship for what it is, and how can we best honor that, right? Yeah. But yeah, it's just, I guess, again, going back to the breath too, tuning in moment to moment. What is this right now? And then how has it shifted?
Right.
Whew, I'm telling you though, this relationship stuff is hard, man. And you and I, we do this as a profession. So I hope that anybody who's watching this can start to see how seriously we take this stuff, like how deep this really goes, how much we are embodying it, how and then our authenticity and integrity with being like we don't have it all figured out yet. We're still trying. We've got some theories, we know this works well, we got some tools over here, we know how to have the conversations. And I'm like, maybe that just is the answer. It's like, do you have the tools that no matter what changes out in the world, no matter what the polarity is, no matter what this no matter what the trauma is, do you
Right.
have the tools that you're just going to keep showing up and being like, hey Shophar, what's new today?
Right.
What's your breath like today? You know, like
Right. Right. Right.
what's coming through today? And then knowing how to deal with it, you know, and manage our own nervous system and still be able to hold space for the container, the whole. And
Mhm.
and that, like, that's all I know to do. So I just keep showing up and doing that.
Right.
And that is really what we're teaching people in inclusion too, the group
Yes.
that we're co-facilitating. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I want to invite people to come and join us there. Like there'll be another round too. Like see what this learn some tools at least to get through this part and we figure it out together in
Mhm.
community. And then can you commit to the work? Because I feel like it's less about committing to the partner.
Mhm.
Like obvious if you're committed to the work, the
Mhm.
commitment to the partner is going to happen.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Or if
Right.
you're committed to the love and like creating
Mhm.
the love, then the commitment to the partner is naturally going to be a byproduct of that
Mhm.
because that's part of the love. But we do it backwards. We want the insurance policy
Mhm.
and the commitment. I'm not saying that's a bad thing either because it does create clarity. It does be like, oh, okay. But then if it doesn't, somebody changes their mind, you have to be okay with that. If somebody goes off path, they didn't follow the contract or the commitment or whatever, then you got to be like, oh, okay, be okay with that. But can you show up and keep doing the work? And that is always that's what I'm looking for when I'm assessing potential partners, whether they're business partners, love partners, friendships. Are they showing up to do the work?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is the criteria, the best criteria to, especially these days, like with clients and stuff. One thing that I've always recommended is that especially once they've had these different experiences and everything like that, energetically and stuff like that, is kind of set that as your new standard. Is like that you want someone that's showing up, if not necessarily that they are able to do these things yet in themselves or with you, but at least that there's a willingness
Mm-hmm.
to learn and to, in other words, I think definitely on this planet, kind of one of the things that ladies need to hold kind of accountable is be tantric. Like I'm gonna need you to, I'm gonna need you to, because this is processing these different things, and it means that that we're going to communicate our truths and everything and stuff like that. So, uh, just going back to that nature thing, to someone who's really, like you said, willing to be authentic and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to be the criteria.
Yeah. And I saw something today. I think it's a guy on Instagram. I think his handle is Archer Love. He went
Mm,
off grid. He has like goats and he's really into nature and he talks about sovereignty and
mm,
all of this stuff too. And he said something interesting today that actually made me think. And he said, I don't think there's anything such thing as equality. Like equality doesn't exist in nature.
mm,
Nature, and it's kind of like what you're saying about like, okay, who's going to play this role today? Like you're not thinking of it. Like if you the birds, you know, he's like, just because the the early bird gets the worm, does that mean that now we take some of the worms and give them to the birds that just didn't want to wake up that day or leave the nest? You know, like that was a choice they made, you know, like
right.
there is no equality in nature. Like you don't, it's like that maybe that imbalance in things is what gives you the drive to go get something, you know, whether it's the worm or whatever. If we're having an issue in our lives, in our any kind of issue, or even in a relationship, we're having a conflict, it's like that instability is what motivates us to actually do something, to grow, to do something about it.
Right.
You know, every time I go, and there's this like joke about every time a woman goes through a breakup, like in the next 48 hours, she's got like a master's degree, a new car, like, it's like, you know, like she's totally like transformed the world, because it's like, it's such a thing for women. It's like we go through a hardship and it's like, okay, now it's our excuse to rebuild ourselves or to invest in, you know, this personal growth. It's the instability, it's the inequality. It's like, ooh, there's something here now that we have to come back to. And in nature, everybody has a different role.
Right.
It contributes to the wholeness and the synergy. And I could see how this could be like spun in a not so good way too, you know, like it could be used to justify, again, patriarchal systems or white supremacy systems or whatever, but that's not the idea. It's just like, go into nature and get in harmony, right? Like if you spend the day, like yesterday, barefoot dancing in the park, and then drumming barefoot. I saw you take your shoes off when you got to the drum circle.
You're right.
You're earthing, you're connecting with nature. You're seeing the different animals. If you're swimming in the ocean, you're not thinking, you're absorbing and getting reconnected on every level with that harmony that animals don't have to think about, because they don't complicate it with all this stuff.
Right.
They just do it or fight it out or whatever else, or compete or whatnot. So,
well, yeah, and then, you know, I mean, then it's also the thing of perspective, right? Because how's that equality for the worm? What about this perspective? Like, man, this sucks.
There's the Shophar I know. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it sucks to be the worm. Oh my goodness. Interestingly enough, that was my little spirit guide when I went to movement medicine last week. I had just entered the circle and there's a worm on my foot. I'm like, how did you even get there? I just got here. And there's already a worm crawling on my foot. So yeah, the worm, like where is a safe place for the worm? You know, where's the equality for the worm? Right. Yeah. I know it's easy in uncertain times to get lost in all these philosophical thoughts. And so, you know, I'm trying to open up this conversation and then also distill it back down to very practical, like just a couple practical things that we could do to be more in integrity with our relationships, all of our relationships. And for me, I think that's where I've landed, is show up and do the work. Like, have the tools, learn the tools, do the work in your relationships, but also do the work yourself before you put yourself out there as a master, as a teacher, as leading somebody. Otherwise, it's going to be the blind leading the blind, right? You need to have, you can't lead people where you haven't gone.
Right, that part. Yeah.
What would you add, or what are your points of, like, if we're to distill some of this stuff down for like just some very practical daily guideposts about staying in integrity in your relationships?
I think well, you talked earlier about, how do you pronounce his name? Jung and Freud.
Oh yeah, I mean, I always say Carl Jung, but Jung. Yeah, Jung, I don't know. I don't speak the language, so I don't know. I don't know if I mean integrity with the pronunciation. I should probably look that up.
I never understood like why we don't use the letters that would help English speakers get it. You know, like so because it's a J, but it's not. That's not the sound that it makes. I don't think so. It's not Carl Jung, but. Yeah. So let's use the letters that would help us pronounce it right. But anyway, that's another thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
But yeah, so that dude and Freud, and I think I said his name right. Him and Sigmund, they you talked about their relationship, mentor and mentee.
Mhm.
And another interesting one that worked similar like that was what's his name, Edison and Tesla.
Oh, okay.
Tesla started off working for Edison, and then he felt a certain energy in his own ball sacks, and was like, you know what, I'm feeling some what's the word? He's feeling some strength in his testes, and he was like, okay, now I need to fortitude there, and I need to go forward and do my own thing.
Mm.
There's a time when we need to have and their big thing that they were rivals on at one point was direct current and alternating current.
Oh, interesting.
So
It feels like masculine and feminine a little bit, like
a-
from young.
again, like you were saying with them, exactly. And so my point is that if we're going to distill it down into a simple thing, it's like, how can we be whole?
Mm-hmm.
How can we be whole?
Yeah.
That's when we're going to be in integrity, is when we're being whole.
Mm-hmm.
And don't try to quiet one part of ourselves, and then totally suppress one part and feed the other, or vice versa, or even in a relating with others like this. How can this be a whole thing? And be very honest with ourselves, again, integrity. Be very honest when it's not holistic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just brings me back to the name of our group, which is inclusion. It's like inclusion means that you're including all those parts of you, all those parts of the relationship, the bigger dynamic. You're not disowning. I guess that would be the shadow, right? When we're not whole, it's because we are not acknowledging the shadow, and we're disowning those parts that we don't like, or that are ugly, or that we're like, oh no, that's not us, so I don't do that.
Right.
And that's the part that like starts to scream at us eventually, or we keep attracting people that have that shadow in them, so that we can see it, because we can see it easily in somebody else, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
Right.
along with that, I guess it would be a reminder. What was triggered in me as we talk about the whole is not to use pieces of people. And I think this gets tricky, because it's like accepting the whole of who somebody is. Even going back to that blog that I read on Kenya's website, the woman who was identifying her ideal future relationship, how she's like, maybe this person makes me laugh a lot, so I want to go spend time with them when I need a laugh. And maybe this person does this, and this person's really good at this, and that person's really good at that. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. And we have to be careful with that too, that we're like, oh, I only keep you around because you're funny, but I don't really like any of those other parts of you. Like, you're gonna have to go somewhere else for that. You know what I mean? Or like, I just want this from you. Can we make a relationship where we have a relationship contract where when we hang out, you're just funny. That's all you do. Like, how it's like that. So it's like honoring that wholeness and the people that are in front of us too, I feel like. And we're not just treating them like a buffet of food based
Right.
on our tastes for that season or that day.
Well, I know what you just spoke to there for me on my journey, and it's something I'm still working on. But I know that was a turning point for me, as a man. With women, it's like, oh, see a fat ass, or something like that, and it's like, oh, she has a fat ass, and it's like, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
She has dreams. She has disenchantment. She has failures and successes, and she's a whole being
Mm-hmm.
beyond just the fat ass.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that it was a turning point for me when I started to realize that more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're speaking to, I understand the thought process there, but and it can't serve a place, but I think you're very good to have that caution,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't compartmentalize people and be like, oh, this is the person that I do this with, and I don't see the other parts of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, a lot of times, humor comes from a very dark thing, and people take their lemons and make lemonade from it. But do you care to hear about the lemons, or you just want the lemonade all the time? So
Right. That's some bypassing bullshit right there, right? Yeah.
right.
And then we start getting into patriarchal, predatory taking again, because
Mm.
it's like I don't want to have anything to do with the 20 or 40 years that you were going through hell. I just want to pick the fruits that came from all that gardening that you did. So can you just give me your fruits? I'll give
Right.
you $1 for them. Like whatever else. And I see this, even it's not just men doing it, like you mentioned the fat ass, but it's also like I think a thing that happens a lot for men is they feel like ATM machines. That a woman is like,
Yes.
oh, I'm gonna keep
Yes.
him around because he buys me things and he'll take me out to dinner. And if I ever want to go together, I just call him and then he'll take me out to dinner. But now he has, he wants to do something. He wants to spend time with her. No, I don't have time for that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it does work both ways. And I think not just being aware of that, maybe some of those tendencies as we start to explore, um, I guess what you said earlier, like having it all. Like we can have our needs and they can have their needs, but let's also not get a little carried away with objectifying and taking this new relationship model or relationship way of being. And because we're not aware of our shadows, we're not aware of the unconscious, the subconscious stuff, turning it into the same old shit,
Huh.
just the same old stuff.
Right. 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 Jeez.
Well, we've been on for a while. I'm getting tired. You look tired.
Yeah. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hour and a half. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's probably a good time to wrap this up. Anything that you want to invite people to, Shophar? Anything that you got going on? It's been a while since we've talked business.
Yeah. No. Oh, wow. Just stay tuned in. Maybe I'll come back again when I have more stuff going on. When it's closer. But I'm really excited about so many things are percolating right now. Hip hop Kundalini is going to be coming back really strong in
Oh
2022.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so very excited with the things that are coming through with that, and you know, if people are interested in couples work or uh, just men want to work on their stuff or whatever, I'm here.
Yeah, you're doing
Yeah.
some one-on-one sessions now. Yeah, amazing.
Hmm.
Okay. So I know Kirti's name is still on the screen, but your
Oh,
website,
I did. That's funny.
which is perfect because they were expecting her to show up anyway, and then they're like, "Wait, this isn't Kirti," but it is.
I didn't even notice that the whole time. That's funny.
Oh, that's okay. But your website is Fosho Energy Work, yeah? .com.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
FOSHO energywork.com.
That's it.
And see what you're up to and what you got going on. And you wrote an amazing book too, so they can check that out about some of these not exactly these theories that we've been talking about, but the energetic, the deeper energetic connections behind relationships. So want to invite people to that. And thank you so much for being here. It really was a pleasure. And I look forward to, yeah, you coming back on again and bringing some more masculine energy back to the show. It's been very feminine this season. So
Okay.
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's an honor always, and thank you for creating room for I'm glad you keep going with the goddess vibrations, and this stuff is very important right now, so
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for saying that. All right. Good night, everyone who's watching. We will see you again next week with a new guest. And keep reaching out, keep telling me what you're interested in, and we will have these conversations. We're not scared. We'll talk about anything. All right.